Rain splatters against Ryan's cracked windshield. 11 minutes to the interview of a lifetime, or 10 minutes late. Then he sees her, designer jeans soaked, grease-stained hands fumbling with a ruined BMW tire. Car trouble? He asks, his gut twisting with a premonition he can't yet name. Ryan Carter's calloused hands trembled as he straightened his thrift store tie in the rearview mirror of his rusted pickup truck. He pressed the accelerator, then slammed the brakes. There on the side of the empty highway stood a woman next to a $200,000 BMW with its front tire completely shredded, designer jeans soaked through, manicured hands stained with grease. She looked more lost than any millionaire should in this forgotten corner of America. Ryan's engine idled. 11 minutes to his future, 10 minutes to being late, 9 minutes to losing the only shot at giving his daughter the life she deserved. His father's voice echoed in his memory. Son, you help folks when they need it, no matter what. Ryan killed the engine and grabbed the toolkit that still smelled like his old man's aftershave. He had no idea he was about to help the one person who could make or destroy his dreams. The woman looked up as Ryan's boots crunched across gravel, her eyes holding the kind of exhaustion that came from carrying invisible weight. She was younger than he'd expected, maybe early 30s, with expensive clothes all wrong for the weather. Her smile when she saw him approach was genuine enough to cut through the morning gloom. Car trouble? Ryan asked, kneeling beside the shredded tire where the rim was bent and rubber torn beyond any quick fix. I have no idea what happened, she said, voice carrying hints of East Coast refinement that seemed out of place on this rural Indiana highway. 1 minute I was driving, the next I'm spinning into the shoulder. I called dinner relay, but they said it could be ours. She gestured helplessly at her expensive car while Ryan checked his watch, stomach nodding as he imagined the HR manager at Brooks Automotive making notes about punctuality in his file, 8:37 and counting. What's your name? He asked, loosening lug nuts with his father's old wrench, the familiar weight connecting him to countless hours spent learning that fixing things was both skill and calling. Amy, she said after just a moment's hesitation that Ryan was too focused to notice. Amy Johnson, you're either my guardian angel or the last decent person left in Indiana. Her nervous laugh carried gratitude from someone unused to depending on strangers, though something about the way she said her name felt rehearsed. Ryan worked steadily, muscle memory guiding hands through motions performed thousands of times while rain soaked his interview shirt. Just Ryan. Ask my 9-year-old daughter about angels. She'll give you a list of my failings that could fill a phone book. Amy crouched beside him, watching with genuine interest that felt different from casual curiosity, as if she understood the skill involved in ways her manicured hands shouldn't have suggested. Been fixing things since I could hold a wrench, Ryan continued, voice softening with memory. Dad said, every problem has a solution if you're willing to get your hands dirty. Within 20 minutes, Ryan had Amy's BMW road ready again, waving away her offered bills with grease-stained hands because money felt wrong somehow, like it would cheapen something important. How can I thank you? She asked, seeming almost uncomfortable with the luxury of her leather interior now, as if seeing it through his eyes for the first time. Pass it forward, Ryan said simply, his father's philosophy distilled to its essence. Help someone else when they need it. Amy nodded as if understanding something deeper in the advice, her corporate mask slipping to reveal someone hungry for exactly this kind of genuine connection. As Amy prepared to drive away, she rolled down her window with an intensity that made her next question feel more significant than polite curiosity. Ryan, the interview you missed? What was it for? Something flickered across her face when he answered. Management position at Brooks Automotive. Been dreaming about it for months. A moment where her careful composure slipped, and she looked like someone processing unexpected information that changed everything. Then she smiled and pulled away, leaving Ryan standing alone as rain finally eased, wondering if his father's advice about helping people was worth missing the most important appointment of his life. Ryan drove home through streets that seemed grayer than usual, past Sophie's elementary school, past Murphy's auto repair, where his boss would want explanations he wasn't sure how to give. The trailer park where he and Sophie lived wasn't much to look at, but it was clean and safe, and theirs with Sophie's pink room in their small garden, where tomatoes and beans grew in neat rows. It wasn't the white picket fence life he'd imagined when he married Sarah, But it was honest work and honest living, built on love, and the kind of values his father had tried to teach about helping people. Sophie was eating cereal at their tiny kitchen table when Ryan walked in, her dark braids framing a face that looked up with eyes too wise for 9 years old. "How'd it go, Dad?" she asked with the careful tone of someone prepared for either celebration or consolation, having learned to read the subtle signs of disappointment that adults tried to hide. When Ryan explained he'd missed the interview to help someone who needed it more, Sophie nodded like this made perfect sense. "Mom always said you'd give away your last dollar to help a stranger," she said without judgment. Only the matter-of-fact acceptance of a child who understood her father's character better than he sometimes understood himself. "Are you going to be okay about the job?" Sophie's question carried the sensitivity she'd developed since her mother's death, becoming attuned to her father's worries in ways that made her seem older than her years. Ryan smiled genuinely for the first time that morning. "We'll figure it out, Sophie. We always do," knowing it was truth, even if he wasn't sure how they'd manage this time. They'd survived Sarah's illness and death, survived medical bills and single parenthood, and they'd survived this too because they had each other and the quiet dignity that came from doing right, even when it cost something. What Ryan didn't know was that Amy Johnson had pulled into Murphy's auto repair parking lot 15 minutes after leaving him, watching through rain-streaked windows as he went inside to explain to his boss why he'd missed the interview that could have changed everything. The woman who'd seemed so helpless beside her broken car was making a phone call that would alter both their lives forever, her voice carrying authority that would have shocked the man who just helped her. Amy Johnson wasn't who she appeared to be, and Ryan Carter had no idea he just helped the one person with power to make his dreams come true or destroy them completely. The next morning brought unexpected visitors to Murphy's garage when Ryan was deep in a Honda engine and Amy appeared in the doorway, transformed from yesterday's lost motorist into someone who moved with quiet confidence. Gone were the designer jeans and helpless expression, replaced by a simple blue dress and the bearing of someone who knew exactly who they were and where they belonged. "Ryan," she said, voice different now, warmer and more certain, carrying authority that hadn't been there yesterday when she'd needed his help on the highway. "Amy," Ryan replied, wiping greasy hands while suddenly aware of oil stains and the contrast between them that seemed starker in the harsh garage lighting. "What brings you back to our corner of paradise?" His tone was friendly but puzzled because most people he helped never crossed his path again, and there was something about her return that felt significant, though he couldn't identify what. "Wanted to thank you properly and brought coffee," she said, holding expensive downtown coffee he couldn't afford. The gesture thoughtful but revealing resources that didn't match yesterday's stranded motorist act. They sat on the bench outside watching morning traffic crawl through Plainfield's 2 stoplights and handful of businesses that had survived economic downturns through stubbornness and community loyalty. "I feel terrible about yesterday," Amy said with genuine regret that seemed real but carried undertones of something else, like she was testing his response to gauge his character. "You missed something important because of me." Ryan's reply was firm and immediate. "I made a choice. Nobody forced me to stop." The conviction in his voice absolute because his father had taught him that helping people was always the right thing regardless of cost. "What if I told you Brooks Automotive might give you another chance?" Amy asked, her mysterious smile making Ryan suddenly aware he knew nothing about this woman except expensive cars and tire trouble. When he questioned how she'd know anyone there, she answered with calculated ambiguity. "You could say that," her eyes suggesting she knew more than she was saying. Ryan's suspicion was immediate and honest. "Nice fairy tale. But I live in the real world where companies like Brooks don't give second chances to guys who live in trailer parks and miss interviews to help strangers." The bitterness wasn't resentment, but matter-of-fact acceptance of limitations learned through experience. "What if it could work differently?" Amy asked quietly. Vulnerability in the question that made Ryan look more carefully at someone who seemed tired of the world working exactly as it did. Before he could answer, Sophie's school bus rumbled past and Amy watched his daughter wave with something like hunger, the expression of someone observing connections she'd never experienced. "That's Sophie," Ryan said with fierce protectiveness. "Light of my life and reason I get up every morning." his voice carrying the love that would sacrifice anything for a child's well-being. While Amy's expression softened with loneliness that came from watching other people's lives from outside, Amy stood with practiced efficiency, suggesting schedules and obligations beyond his imagination, but hesitated as if reluctant to break whatever connection had formed. "If Brooks Automotive calls for another interview, would you go?" she asked with weight that felt disproportionate to casual conversation, as if his answer mattered more than he could understand. When Ryan confirmed he would, she smiled with relief that seemed excessive for someone who was supposedly just a grateful stranger. "Take care, Ryan Carter," she said, walking away before he could ask the questions crowding his mind, leaving him wondering why this felt like the beginning of something rather than the end. The call came that afternoon while Ryan was replacing brake pads, his boss answering with confusion and amazement before announcing, "Brooks Automotive wants you tomorrow morning. They want to reschedule." Ryan took the phone with unsteady hands, listening to Janet Morrison's professional warmth as she explained they understood he'd had car trouble that prevented yesterday's interview. The creative interpretation made him wonder what story Amy had told, but he wasn't about to correct a record that gave him this second chance. "Don't worry about yesterday," Janet assured him. These things happened with respect in her voice that hadn't been there initially. That evening, Ryan helped Sophie with math homework while interview clothes hung freshly pressed, the domestic routine precious as reminder of tomorrow's stakes. "Nervous about tomorrow?" Sophie asked with perception that consistently amazed him. 9 years old, but already more emotionally intelligent than most adults. "A little," Ryan admitted. "But sometimes nervous means you're doing something important," echoing Sarah's words from early relationship days when risks felt like adventures rather than necessities. Sophie's recitation of her mother's wisdom about courage carried careful precision of someone preserving precious fragments. "Mom said courage isn't about not being scared. It's doing right things even when you are." "Would Mom have liked Amy?" Sophie asked with perceptiveness that caught Ryan off guard, having observed more than he realized during yesterday's events. "When the bus passed, she was watching you wave at me and looked sad, like wishing someone waved at her." Sophie explained with clarity that cut through adult complications to identify essential human need for connection. Ryan marveled at his daughter's ability to see straight to hearts of things. "Mom would have liked anyone who helped bring good things into our life," he said carefully. "Is Amy bringing good things?" Sophie pressed, and Ryan could only answer honestly. "Hope so, kiddo. Really hope so." Next morning dawned clear and bright as if weather gods decided to cooperate with Ryan's second chance, and he dressed carefully in his good shirt and tie. Sophie helped pick with silver dots she called professional but not boring. Brooks Automotive occupied gleaming glass building outside Indianapolis that Ryan had driven past dozens of times, wondering what working somewhere so successful would feel like. The marble lobby with expensive furniture and hotel-like reception made him approach with careful politeness. Working-class people learned in places they might not belong, but the receptionist's warm professionalism suggested his name was flagged for special attention. Janet Morrison emerged exactly at 9 with purposeful stride that valued punctuality, leading Ryan through cubicle maze to conference room where Tom Stevens waited alongside a third person who made Ryan's world tilt sideways. Amanda Brooks, our CEO, Janet, announced as the woman turned around, and standing before him in sharp business suit was Amy Johnson. Except she wasn't Amy Johnson at all, but the chief executive of Brooks Automotive Parts Company, the woman he'd helped change tires, whose car trouble made him miss his original interview, who'd somehow arranged for him to be sitting here now, was saying, "Hello, Ryan. Thank you for coming in." With voice carrying confidence he'd sensed but not understood during their coffee conversation. Ryan's mind raced through past days, recontextualizing every conversation and gesture with the woman he'd known as Amy, realizing she was CEO all along and had lied about everything. "I think we need to talk," he said carefully, voice steadier than he felt. While Amanda's composure never wavered, though something flickered in her eyes that might have been vulnerability or guilt. The interview proceeded with surreal politeness when everyone knew something was wrong, but nobody ready to address it directly. Tom Stevens asking standard questions about experience, while Ryan answered honestly despite growing tension with the woman who deceived him. When Tom asked why Ryan missed his original interview, Ryan looked directly at Amanda with expression part challenge, part accusation. I stopped to help someone who needed it, someone whose expensive car broke down on rural highway, someone who seemed lost and frightened, and I chose putting another person's immediate need ahead of my long-term goals. Amanda's eyes never left his face as she asked, "Do you regret that choice?" And Ryan answered without hesitation, "No, I don't regret helping someone who needed help, but I have questions about why that someone felt need to lie about who she was." The silence stretched until Janet suggested a break, and Amanda dismissed the others for private conversation. "You have every right to be angry," Amanda said when they were alone, her voice softer now, carrying vulnerability that reminded Ryan of the woman who'd stood helpless beside broken car. "Do I?" Ryan replied, studying her face for signs of the person he'd shared coffee with. "I'm not sure what rights I have here, or what game we're playing." Amanda walked to window overlooking parking lot, where his pickup sat among luxury cars, like reminder of distance between their worlds. Explaining she'd been driving to meeting about cost-cutting measures affecting hourly workers when her tire blew. "When you stopped to help me, you had no idea who I was, but helped anyway, even though it cost something important. And do you know how rare that is in my world? Your world where people lie about names and jobs and intentions," Ryan said, testing words for implications, while Amanda accepted the accusation without softening it. When he asked why she hadn't told him who she was, she explained wanting to know who he was when he didn't think it mattered, wanting to see if his kindness was real or calculated. "That you're exactly who you appear to be, which is something I've forgotten how to be," she admitted with honesty that surprised Ryan, though harder questions pressed against his consciousness about whether he was getting job because of charity or guilt rather than qualifications. Amanda slid folder across table with careful precision, showing technical assessments ranking him top 5%. Reference letters from customers, Tom Stevens' recommendation for immediate consideration, all dated before Monday morning when he'd met Amy Johnson. "But you still could have told me who you were," Ryan said, and Amanda agreed without defending her choice, explaining her selfishness and wanting to be seen as person instead of position, wanting to remember what it felt like having someone help without wanting anything in return. Before Ryan could respond, commotion outside interrupted as Janet Morrison rushed toward elevators with obvious urgency. "Emergency at Plant 2. Janet's voice was tiny through speaker, carrying stress that made both sit straighter. "Major equipment failure on line 3. Tom's headed there, but it's bad. Whole production schedule at risk." Amanda closed eyes briefly, calculating implications while Ryan found himself standing before conscious decision. Body responding to mechanical failure description with automatic interest. "What kind of equipment failure?" he asked, already moving toward door, as mind shifted into focused mode that had served him through years of complex diagnosis. "I need to see it," ignoring Amanda's protest about not working there yet. "But if you want knowing who I really am, let me show you." The drive to Plant 2 took 20 minutes through industrial Indianapolis traffic, Amanda's BMW purring past Ryan's usual domain while he worked through hydraulic system failure possibilities, and she drove with focused intensity silence, between them feeling collaborative rather than adversarial as emergency suspended personal complications for shared purpose. Plant 2 was machinery maze with steady production hum, except line 3 standing silent and ominous, surrounded by frustrated technicians and worried supervisors, while Tom Stevens met them with relief, warning that their best people had been looking 2 hours with no luck at solving the $20 million problem. Ryan circled the main drive assembly with trained eye taking aching details. Frustrated engineers had stared at without seeing, kneeling beside hydraulic pump housing with diagnostic intimacy that separated mechanics from technicians. "Has anyone checked filter housing on hydraulic reservoir?" he asked, cutting through technical discussion with simplicity that revealed either genius or ignorance, pointing to machinery section that looked identical to everything around. But his experienced eye saw subtle, significant differences. Secondary filter housing most people don't know exists because it's hidden behind main reservoir panel. And if that gets clogged, it creates back pressure, triggering exactly this cascade failure. Tom Stevens frowned at maintenance records, showing all filters changed last month. But Ryan explained, "Primary filters, Yeah, but secondary housing on different schedule because supposed to last longer, except when running high-volume production, it clogs faster than expected. He was already removing suit jacket and rolling sleeves with practiced efficiency. Need 3/8 wrench, flashlight, 10 minutes, and probably new clothes. After this, what followed was 30 minutes of methodical problem solving that separated experienced mechanics from engineers who understood theory but never crawled underneath machines to discover why they weren't working. Ryan disappearing into hydraulic lines maze and following system logic with hands that read machinery like books. Amanda watched from sidelines, fascinated by transformation in man she'd thought she was beginning to understand. This was Ryan Carter in his element, confident and focused, completely at home in grease and metal and practical solutions world. When he emerged in borrowed coveralls story with hydraulic fluid, grinning with satisfaction of someone who'd solved puzzle that stumped everyone else, he called fire it up with confidence of someone knowing exactly what would happen next. The conveyor system started with smooth hum that was most beautiful sound anyone in Plant 2 had heard all day. Assembly components moving in perfect synchronization as production schedule got back on track. "How did you know?" Tom Stevens asked, staring at functioning machinery, like witnessing miracle while Ryan wiped hands with matter-of-fact tone. "Because I've seen it before. Different machine, same principle. Sometimes solution isn't complicated, just hidden where most people don't think to look." Amanda approached with expression mixing professional appreciation and personal recognition. That was impressive, but Ryan's response was characteristic understatement. That was just Tuesday afternoon. "This is what I do. This is who I am." Her quiet reply carried new understanding of what Ryan brought to problems that couldn't be solved in boardrooms. "I can see that. Question is, do you want to do it here?" Ryan met her eyes directly, processing not just job offer, but everything that brought them to this moment. "Are you offering me the job because I just saved your $20 million contract?" Amanda's answer was immediate and definitive. "I'm offering you the job because you're exactly what this company needs. Someone who understands real work happens on floor, not boardroom. Someone who knows best solutions come from people closest to actual problems." Tom Stevens stepped forward with decisive energy of someone who'd seen enough to make judgment. "Ryan, I don't know what happened between you two before today, but you solved in 30 minutes what our entire engineering team couldn't figure out in 4 hours. If Amanda's offering you a job, take it." Ryan looked around plant floor one more time, imagining himself part of this operation, leading teams, building things that mattered. Everything he'd hoped for, and more than dared expect. But something still felt unfinished between him and the woman who'd started this complicated dance. "I need to think about it," he said finally. Honesty cutting through moments' euphoria, and Amanda nodded with understanding rather than disappointment. "Of course, take whatever time you need." Ryan's clarification surprised her. "Actually, I don't need time thinking about the job. I need time figuring if I can trust the person offering it to me." That evening, Ryan sat on trailer steps while Sophie played in their garden. Tomatoes coming nicely and beans grown tall enough for staking. Simple, honest work, producing something useful in world that often didn't make sense. Sophie finished weeding and joined him with dirt-stained hands but serious expression, suggesting she'd been processing adult complications. "How was your interview, Dad?" When he answered complicated, she pressed for clarification with directness that got to heart of things. Good complicated or bad complicated? Ryan considered seriously, knowing Sophie deserved honest answers, even when they weren't easy to explain. "Not sure yet, kiddo. Sometimes when things seem too good to be true, it's because they are. But sometimes it's because you're not used to good things happening." Sophie's follow-up question was inevitable. "Which one do you think this is?" And Ryan was quiet for a long moment. Watching sunset over Trailer Park where they'd built their life together. Wasn't much by some standards, but theirs real, built on love and hard work and values. His father tried teaching about helping people and doing right things. "My gut's telling me sometimes the best opportunities come disguised as biggest risks." He finally answered, feeling truth of words, even as uncertainty remained. Next morning brought unexpected visitor when Ryan was making breakfast, and knock interrupted their routine. Opening door to find Amanda standing on front steps, looking distinctly out of place in business attire, among modest homes and practical vehicles. Amanda, this is a surprise, Ryan said, stepping outside for privacy. And she explained needing to see where he lived, needing to understand who he really was before asking him to trust her. He gestured around small community where he'd raised Sophie past 3 years, taking in neat yards and practical gardens, older cars maintained with obvious care, children's toys, speaking of families making most of modest circumstances. This is it. This is us. Not much to look at, but it's home. Amanda followed his gaze with careful attention of someone learning to see beyond surface appearances. It's honest, she said finally. And when Ryan mentioned it being all they could afford on mechanic's salary, she clarified. That's not what I meant. I've spent 15 years surrounded by people measuring everything in profit margins and market share terms. This place feels real. Before Ryan could respond, Sophie burst through door with backpack and half-bushed hair, stopping short when she saw Amanda. 9-year-old social radar immediately picking up adult tension. Dad, everything okay? Ryan's introduction carried careful formality of someone navigating complicated relationships while protecting child from unnecessary confusion. Sophie studied Amanda with frank curiosity, children brought to new situations. Evaluation unfiltered by adult politeness. Are you the lady from coffee shop? Dad said you helped him get another interview. Amanda knelt to Sophie's eye level with careful attention. Understanding children deserved honest answers. I'm the lady whose tire your dad fixed. He helped me when I was stranded and scared, even though it meant missing something important. Sophie's matter-of-fact response revealed her understanding of her father's character. That's just what Dad does. He helps people. Mom used to say it was his superpower before asking directly if Amanda would give her father the job. Amanda's composure wavered at directness from someone too young for corporate complications. That depends on whether your dad wants it. But Sophie's response was immediate. Of course he wants it. He's been practicing interview answers in mirror for weeks. He wants to give me better life, but he's worried about leaving Mr. Murphy because he feels loyal. Ryan's embarrassed protest was affectionate rather than angry, and Sophie hugged him quickly before surprising Amanda with hug too. Gesture carrying unconscious generosity of children raised with love despite difficult circumstances. I hope you give Dad the job. He deserves good things. They watched Sophie run toward school bus, backpack bouncing and hair streaming behind with resilient energy that had carried her through loss and uncertainty. And when bus pulled away, Ryan and Amanda found themselves alone with unfinished business building since rainy Route 9 morning. She's remarkable, Amanda said with genuine appreciation, and Ryan's response carried pride and protectiveness. She's the best thing I ever did. Only thing I'm sure I got right before asking why Amanda was really there. Her answer revealed vulnerability that corporate persona usually concealed. Admitting yesterday's claim about wanting to be seen as just a person wasn't whole truth. 3 months ago, my father died. Amanda began, voice quieter now, carrying weight of legacy and responsibility. Ryan was beginning to understand. He built Brooks Automotive from nothing, started as mechanic in two-bay garage and turned it into $100 million company. But somewhere along the way, I lost sight of what he was really building. She explained her father's philosophy that company was only as good as people who worked there. That profit meant nothing if it came at expense of treating people right. But after his death, the board pushed for changes that would eliminate jobs and reduce benefits, efficiency improvements that would turn workers into interchangeable parts. I was driving to meeting where I was supposed to approve those changes when my tire blew out. Amanda continued, Ryan understanding larger context of their meeting, seeing how personal crisis and corporate pressure had intersected on rural highway to create possibility of something different. And then you met someone who reminded you why those changes were wrong, Ryan said, and Amanda nodded. I met someone who stopped his whole life to help stranger, someone who put another person's need ahead of own opportunity, someone who reminded me what my father was really trying to build. Her honesty was complete now, stripped of corporate language and personal defensiveness. So this isn't about charity or feeling guilty for lying to me, Ryan said, and Amanda confirmed. This is about me trying to save company my father built on principles I'd forgotten, about me needing someone who won't let me forget them again. Ryan studied her face for corporate double-speak signs, but saw something more complicated. Woman trying to honor father's legacy while fighting pressure from people measuring everything in quarterly profits. When he asked about the board meeting she'd been driving to, Amanda smiled woefully. I postponed it, told them I needed more time reviewing proposals. They weren't happy, but now she was telling them Brooks Automotive was going different direction. We're investing in workers instead of eliminating them, building quality instead of just cutting costs. Remembering that people who actually make our products are most important part of our success, Amanda said, standing with movements suggesting decision rather than departure. Ryan felt something shift inside his chest. Recognition this conversation was about more than job offer, that Amanda was asking him to be part of something larger than either of their individual needs. That's going to be an expensive decision, he observed, and Amanda's voice carried conviction from rediscovered purpose. Short-term maybe, but my father didn't build this company by taking shortcuts or treating people as disposable. He built it by finding good people and giving them chance to do great work. I think you're one of those people, Ryan. But more than that, I think you can help me remember how to be one of those people too, Amanda said. And Ryan looked back at his trailer at Small Garden, where he and Sophie grew vegetables, at life they'd built through hard work and careful choices. Then at Amanda sitting beside him, but looking somehow smaller and more vulnerable than she had in corporate boardroom. I'll take the job, Ryan said. Decision carrying weight of choice rather than desperation on two conditions. Amanda's immediate agreement to his request for 2 weeks to train replacement at Murphy's led to his second condition, dinner with Sophie and him. Nothing fancy, but wanting his daughter to know the person he'd work for and Amanda to know the people she was taking chance on. 2 weeks later, Ryan Carter walked through Brooks Automotive doors as new operations manager for Plant 2. Wearing crisp white shirt and tie, Sophie helped pick. Carrying his father's old toolbox in one hand and briefcase, Amanda had given him another. Briefcase felt strange and professional, but toolbox felt like home, connecting him to generations, building things with hands and taking pride in work well done. His first day included meetings with department heads, facility tours, paperwork that made his head spin, but also conversations with line workers who looked at him with cautious optimism from having a manager who understood their work because he'd done it himself. Carter seems like good people, Ryan overheard one veteran worker tell another during lunch break. Comment carrying judgment weight from someone who'd worked under enough managers to know difference between those who cared and those merely administering knows which end of wrench to hold anyway. That afternoon, Amanda stopped by his new office glass-walled space overlooking production floor where real work happened. Ryan having moved his father's toolbox to place of honor on desk next to family photos and small plant, Sophie insisted would make place more homey. Their conversation was easy. Comfortable familiarity developed over past 2 weeks as working relationship evolved into something feeling like partnership. 6 months later, Ryan stood in the same conference room where he'd first learned Amanda's true identity. But atmosphere was celebratory rather than tense, as Brooks Automotive had just landed biggest contract ever. 5-year deal meaning jobs and stability for hundreds of families in central Indiana. Ladies and gentlemen, Amanda announced to assembled managers and board members, voice carrying satisfaction from achieving goals mattering beyond quarterly reports. I'm pleased reporting Plant 2 has exceeded all production targets for third consecutive quarter, quality up 20%, efficiency up 15%, and more importantly, employee satisfaction scores highest in company history. Applause was genuine, reflecting board learning to measure success in more than quarterly profits. After meeting, Ryan and Amanda walked to parking lot together. Tradition developed as working relationship evolved into partnership rather than simple employment. Amanda having kept modest sedan, saying it reminded her to stay connected to realities of people she served. Any regrets? Amanda asked, echoing conversation from months earlier. And Ryan looked back at building where he'd spent most satisfying months of professional life, where he'd helped implement programs, giving workers real voice in company decisions, where he'd been part of something larger than himself. Just one, he said, Amanda looking concerned until he explained. I regret it took flat tire and missed interview for us to find each other. Regret all time we wasted before we figured how to work together. That evening, Amanda arrived at Carter Trailer with chocolate cake and smile that had become comfortable as family. These dinners having evolved from obligation to tradition, weekly reminder, success meant more than professional achievement. Best accomplishments were ones shared with people who mattered. They sat around small kitchen table that had witnessed homework sessions and bedtime stories and serious conversations about future spaghetti. Perfect conversation, easy chocolate cake from expensive bakery. Amanda had discovered during her year learning to appreciate simple pleasures. Amanda, Sophie said as they finished dinner, voice carrying directness that had become her trademark. Do you ever miss being rich? Amanda nearly choked on coffee, caught off guard by kind of question only Sophie would ask with innocent honesty. Sophie? But Sophie pressed on. It's fair question. And Amanda looked at Ryan, who was trying not to laugh at his daughter's direct approach before turning back to Sophie with serious attention. Important questions deserved. Sophie, I was never really rich in ways that matter. I had money, but didn't have friends caring about me for who I was instead of what I could do for them. Didn't have work feeling meaningful. Didn't have people like you and your dad reminding me what was really important. Her answer satisfied Sophie. So friendship is more valuable than money. And Amanda's response was perfect. Chocolate cake tastes better when you share it with people you care about. Later, after Sophie had gone to bed and Amanda was preparing to leave, she and Ryan sat on front steps, watching stars appear in Indiana sky. Clear night making small-town life feel spacious rather than limiting, filled with possibilities revealed in moments of quiet contemplation. Ryan, can I ask you something? Amanda said. And when he encouraged her, she wondered aloud about what would have happened if he hadn't stopped that morning. If he'd driven past her broken car and made it to interview on time. Ryan considered questions seriously, following alternate timeline to logical conclusion. Sometimes I think about it, but then I remember what my dad used to say about regrets. He said, regretting kind action was like apologizing for being human. Said, every time you help someone, your betting world is worth the effort. And even when bet doesn't pay off way you expect, you're still ahead because you prove to yourself you're the kind of person who makes that bet. Ryan's voice carried wisdom inherited from generations of working people, learning to find meaning in service rather than accumulation. And Amanda was quiet moment processing wisdom from generations, learning to find meaning in work and connection rather than accumulation. Your father sounds like he was wise man, she said, and Ryan agreed. He would have liked you would have seen in you what I see. Someone trying to honor people who came before while building something better for people who come after. Amanda stood to leave but paused at car door with hesitation of someone having something important to say but unsure how to express it. Ryan, thank you. When he asked for what this time, she answered for stopping, for trusting, for reminding me. Best way to honor someone's legacy is to live by their values instead of just talking about them. Ryan's response was equally heartfelt. Thank you for giving me chance to be part of something bigger than myself. Thank you for showing Sophie that work can be meaningful and companies can be forces for good. As Amanda drove away, Ryan remained on steps a few minutes longer, thinking about chain of choices leading to this moment. Flat tire, missed interview, decision to help stranger, CEO brave enough to admit she needed remembering who she was supposed to be. None had been planned. All required faith in people and possibilities not measured in quarterly reports. His phone buzzed with text from Amanda. Thank you for dinner. Thank you for friendship. Thank you for proving good things happen to people who choose kindness over convenience. And Ryan typed back, thank you for proving sometimes people who need help most are ones with power to help others. Inside trailer, Sophie was probably already asleep, dreaming of science projects and scholarship applications, and future full of possibilities seeming attainable rather than impossible. It was an ending Ryan had imagined when he dressed for interview that rainy Monday morning. It was better. Proof that sometimes most important appointments were ones you missed, and sometimes best opportunities came disguised as obligations to help other people. Ryan Carter stood up, brushed off his jeans, and went inside to check on his daughter one more time before bed. Sophie sleeping peacefully in room filled with books about engineering and science, desk covered with scholarship applications, no longer seeming like impossible dreams. On nightstand next to picture of her mother sat business card. Amanda had given her, with title Future Engineer, printed below her name. In morning, they would all wake up and return to work of building something worth building. Company proving business success and human dignity weren't mutually exclusive. Community where children could dream of futures seeming attainable. World where kindness was still rewarded and good people were still given chances to do great work. But tonight they slept peacefully, knowing they had bet on each other and won. Dreams filled with flat tires that changed everything. And people who stopped to help strangers without knowing it would lead to most meaningful chapters of their lives. Proof that sometimes the biggest risks really did lead to most important rewards, and that his father had been right all along about helping people being more important than helping